The courtroom buzzed. Everyone knew Young Thug. His music blared from cars and headphones. He was a star, but today he was a defendant. Jeffery Williams, the man behind the music, stood accused. The charges were serious: racketeering, gang activity, violence. The weight of it all showed on his face. After a long and complicated trial, the verdict was in. Time served. He was going home. The courtroom erupted. Some cheered, some gasped. But for Young Thug, it was a moment of quiet relief. He'd spent over 2 years behind bars, his life on hold. The charges stemmed from a sweeping RICO case, a law designed to target organized crime. Prosecutors painted him as the leader of Young Slime Life, a dangerous gang terrorizing Atlanta. They pointed to his lyrics, his tattoos, his lifestyle as proof. But Young Thug and his lawyers fought back, arguing that YSL was simply a record label, a family, not a criminal enterprise. The trial had been a media frenzy, a clash of worlds, but now it was over.
RICO. The very word sent chills down spines. It stood for Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, a powerful tool used to dismantle criminal empires. Critics argued it targeted black and brown communities, painting a picture of criminality. Prosecutors could connect unrelated acts under one organization. In Young Thug's case, RICO painted him as the head of a criminal enterprise. Evidence included violence, drug dealing, and witness intimidation. They argued his music was a blueprint for crime. Lyrics, videos, and social media posts were used as evidence. Testimonies from former associates claimed he was the mastermind. The defense argued these witnesses were unreliable, motivated by deals with the prosecution.
Jeffery Williams was born and raised in Atlanta, in the shadow of poverty and violence. Music was his escape, his voice. He rose from the streets to become a global icon. His unique sound captivated millions, but his success was intertwined with the streets he came from. The line between loyalty and criminality blurred. The prosecution argued his generosity was a calculated plan to maintain control. They claimed he used his wealth to fund criminal activity. But his defense argued his success was due to talent and hard work. They said he was a generous man, quick to help those in need.
One of the most controversial aspects of the case was the prosecution's use of Young Thug's lyrics as evidence. They argued that his words weren't just art. They were confessions, threats, and instructions to his gang. They pointed to violent verses, to boasts of criminal activity, to threats against rivals. This tactic, using an artist's words against them, sparked outrage and debate. Critics argued that it was a dangerous precedent, a violation of First Amendment rights. They argued that rap lyrics, like all art, should be protected as free speech, that they shouldn't be taken literally or used to criminalize an artist. They pointed to the long history of using art, particularly black art, to justify oppression and incarceration. They argued that this tactic disproportionately targeted black artists, perpetuating harmful stereotypes and silencing their voices. Young Thug's legal team fought back, arguing that his lyrics were just that, lyrics. They argued that they were works of fiction inspired by the realities of his environment, but not a reflection of his own actions.
Throughout the trial, one constant presence in the courtroom was Young Thug's mother, Miss Leora Williams. She became a symbol of unwavering love and support for her son. She sat through every hearing, her face etched with worry, her eyes never leaving her son. She spoke out in interviews, proclaiming his innocence, vouching for his character. She spoke of the Jeffery she knew, the loving son, the devoted father, the talented artist. She pleaded with the public to see beyond the headlines, to see the human being at the center of the storm. Her pleas were heartfelt, a mother's love on full display. She spoke of his difficult childhood, his struggles, his triumphs. She spoke of his generosity, his kindness, his desire to give back to his community. She reminded everyone that he was more than just a name in the news, more than just a defendant in a courtroom. He was her son, and she would stand by him, no matter what.
As part of the plea agreement, Young Thug stood before the judge and took responsibility for his actions. He acknowledged the pain he caused, the lives he impacted. He expressed remorse for his role in the violence and suffering that plagued his community. He spoke of his desire to change, to be a positive force in the world. He spoke of his children, his desire to be a better role model for them. His words were measured, sincere. He didn't shy away from the consequences of his choices. He acknowledged the impact his music had, the influence he held over young minds. He vowed to use his platform to promote peace, to advocate for change. He spoke of his commitment to mentoring youth, to steering them away from the streets that nearly consumed him. His apology was not just for himself, but for the system that often failed young black men like him. He acknowledged the role poverty, lack of opportunity, and systemic racism played in perpetuating the cycle of violence.
The judge, in her sentencing, acknowledged the complexities of the case. She acknowledged young Thug's talent, his potential, his remorse. She also acknowledged the seriousness of the charges, the impact of his actions. She sentenced him to time served, recognizing the 2 years he'd already spent behind bars. But his freedom came with conditions. He was sentenced to probation, required to perform community service, and prohibited from associating with known gang members. The judge's sentence was a balancing act, an attempt to hold young Thug accountable while also offering him a chance at redemption. She spoke directly to him, urging him to use his platform for good, to be an example of change. She challenged him to be a voice for peace, to help heal the community he was once accused of harming. She reminded him that this was a second chance, a rare opportunity to rewrite his story.
Young Thug walked out of the courtroom a free man, but the experience undoubtedly changed him. He carried the weight of the charges, the trauma of incarceration, the stigma of the trial. The terms of his probation placed restrictions on his life, his movements, his associations. He could no longer move freely in the city that made him, the city he loved. He was constantly under scrutiny, his every move watched, his every word dissected. The price of his freedom was steep, a constant reminder of the past he was trying to escape. But amidst the restrictions, there was hope. He was surrounded by loved ones, by family and friends who never gave up on him. He was embraced by fans who saw beyond the headlines, who believed in his potential for change. He had a second chance, a chance to rebuild his life, to redefine his legacy.
Young Thug's case sent shockwaves throughout the music industry and beyond. It sparked conversations about the criminalization of black art, the use of lyrics as evidence, and the systemic issues that disproportionately impact black and brown communities. Artists rallied in support, speaking out against the prosecution's tactics, calling for reform in the justice system. The case highlighted the need for greater cultural understanding, for a recognition of the nuances of artistic expression, particularly in genres like rap that are often misunderstood and misrepresented. It forced a reckoning within the music industry, a conversation about the responsibility artists have to their communities, the impact their words and images can have. Young Thug's case was a stark reminder that the fight for justice, for equality, for artistic freedom is far from over. It was a call to action, a reminder that silence is not an option, that we must use our voices to challenge injustice, to amplify marginalized voices, to create a more equitable and just society.
As Young Thug rebuilds his life, the fight for justice continues. The conversation about criminal justice reform, about ending mass incarceration, about addressing systemic racism must continue. We must challenge the systems that perpetuate inequality, that criminalize poverty, that silence dissent. Young Thug's story is a reminder that everyone deserves a second chance, that redemption is possible, that change is within reach. It is a story of hope, of resilience, of the power of the human spirit to overcome adversity. Let us work together to create a world where justice is a reality for all. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more trending news.